Go into the world and tell every man that you meet, there is a man on the cross.
A Catholic Take. What you need to know right now. A bold synthesis of inspiration and information. Keeping you up to date on the news and issues from a courageous Catholic perspective.
A Catholic Take with Joe McLean starts now.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McLean. It's great to be on with you. Praise be to God. Hey, the far right and beauty. Is it going to be making a comeback? Well, we're going to be talking with Anna Kalinowska today. She has a series of articles over at 1 Peter 5 about the art of dress. But also, I don't know if you caught Rod Dreyer's comments or even the Crux's comments on what is going down in Europe. I mean, they did a huge pushback there. The far right seems to be making a comeback. In fact, I'm looking at this image, this map of the vote in France, and everything but Paris. I mean, essentially, they have spoken loud all across Europe, Ireland, and everywhere else. So I want to share with you a bit of the comments coming out of John Allen at the Crux at 14 past the hour. So we'll be talking about that today as well. Lots of stories we'll be sharing in our show notes today. Just go to thestationofthecross.com/ACT for the details. And by the way, turns out Nancy Pelosi has taken responsibility for not having the National Guard on the Capitol Hill on January the 6th. And a new video, of course, that's just been leaked. And then also the Russian Navy is doing war games just off the coast of Florida. So what could go wrong? We'll be sharing, again, the show notes for you at the top of the hour. Let's pray. Let's dive in. We have a lot to get to today. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thine intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my mother. To thee do I come, before thee I stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer me. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and now your saint of the day.
Saint Barnabas, pray for us. Barnabas was a Jew of the tribe of Levi, born in Cyprus, and may have been one of the 72 disciples of our Lord. He was known as Joseph until the apostles gave him his new name after he sold his land in Jerusalem to help support the early church. Though not one of the 12, he is honored as an apostle, like his friend St. Paul, on whose behalf Barnabas spoke to the other apostles, and whom Barnabas recruited to preach among the Gentiles at Antioch. These two apostles to the Gentiles were later sent out to evangelize Asia Minor, assisted by St. Mark the Evangelist, a relative of Barnabas. Mark quickly left them, daunted by the mission, but Paul and Barnabas continued, succeeding despite hardship and persecution. The two later separated over accepting Mark back, but they remained friends nonetheless, and Mark later proved to Paul his newfound zeal. Barnabas returned with Mark to Cyprus, where certainty of his history ends. The city of Milan considers him their founding bishop, and various accounts relate that he preached in many other regions. The traditional Roman martyrology relates that Barnabas was eventually martyred in Cyprus, where his body was discovered along with his handwritten copy of St. Matthew's Gospel. For more about this day and others in the Church's calendar, visit thestationofthecross.com/saints and seasons. Saint Barnabas, pray for us.
And now your headline news. NBC reports UN Security Council passes Gaza ceasefire proposal. The United Nations Security Council passed a U.S.-drafted ceasefire deal aimed at halting fighting between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. The draft of the resolution, which President Joe Biden approved, was finalized Sunday after almost a week of negotiations among members of the 15-member council. For it to pass, the resolution needed at least 9 votes in favor and no vetoes by the countries that have the power to send any ceasefire proposal back to the drawing board: the U.S., France, Britain, China, or Russia. China made no move to block it, and Russia abstained. The Pillar reports Syro-Malabar priest given new ultimatum. The new head of the Syro-Malabar Church and the apostolic administrator of the Archeparchy presented the ultimatum in a June 9th letter. Quote, "You are formally informed that priests who do not comply with this final instruction of ours, who celebrate the Holy Eucharist after July 3rd in a manner different from the uniformed liturgy, will be considered to have left the communion of the Catholic Church," close quote. They wrote canonically defining failure to comply as schism and carrying the penalty of excommunication. Jihad Watch is reporting Muslims murder over 60 Christians for refusing to convert to Islam. ISIS has claimed responsibility for a brutal attack in the Masala area of Benai, or the Democratic Republic of Congo, which left more than 60 Christians dead. The terrorist group made the claim through a post on their Telegram channel stating, quote, "More than 60 Christians were killed, including a Congolese army officer, in an attack by Caliphate soldiers in eastern Congo. The recent attack was by the Allied Democratic Forces, ADF, a militia affiliated with ISIS, resulting in the deaths of at least 14 Catholics. The massacre involved the victims being killed with machetes and rifles. The Vatican newspaper La Observatore Romano reported that many of the victims were very young and were targeted for refusing to convert to Islam. Let's pray for the repose of their souls in all of those lost to the violence of the Muslims. And those are your headline news. The gospel today comes to us from Matthew chapter 10, verses 7 through 13. This is from the Propers. Jesus said to his disciples, "And preach as you go, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse lepers, cast out demons. You received without pay, give without pay. Take no gold, no silver, no copper in your belts. No bag for your journey, nor 2 tunics, nor sandals, nor a staff, for the laborer deserves his food. In whatever town or village you enter, find out who is worthy in it, and stay with him until you depart. As you enter the house, salute it. And if the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Haydock's Catholic Bible Commentary today says, "For, says St. Chrysostom, they are not sent to announce sensible things, like Moses and the prophets, but something wholly new and before unheard of. They are not like the prophets to confine themselves to the preaching of temporal things. Their doctrine is wholly heavenly. They are sent to announce the good things of eternity." He goes on, "Christ not only gave them the power to preach, but also to work miracles, in order, as St. Gregory says, that works might give force and efficacy to their words. That as their doctrine was new, so their works might be new, and such as were before unheard of, says St. Jerome, men would never have given any credit to the apostles, unlearned and illiterate as they were, had they not been able to work miracles in proof of the great promises they made to them of heaven. Our Savior," he says, "probably wished to repress the avarice of Judas, who, as he kept the common purse, might be tempted to increase their stock by receiving these rewards from their laborers." I find it fascinating, especially since St. Paul continued this effort, being a tent maker, refusing to be sort of provided for by the faithful communities that he would establish and visit and revisit over the course of his life prior to being martyred for the faith in Rome in the 60s. Because these apostles gave their blood, sweat, and tears to the cause, they were able to give good witness, right? They led by example, not just by word. I think that's something that might be a little bit lost on our modern times, don't you agree? So we see these apostles giving the mandate to go and to preach, to perform miracles, to find those that are worthy in their communities and to stay with them. That is also very, very interesting. St. Chrysostom says that the apostles were warned by this admonition of our Savior against 2 vices to which they might be tempted on account of the great favors and graces they had received from heaven, vis-a-vis pride and avarice. First, against pride, gratis, you have received. For example, whatever you have received is the gift of God without any merit of yours. Secondly, against avarice, gratis, give. That is, since everything you have received has been given you gratuitously, so if you make use of the same gifts for the good of others, act also gratuitously without expecting any temporal reward from them. You are given, and you should give. And there abide, says St. Chrysostom, gives 3 reasons for this precept. First, that they might not afflict those whom they left. Secondly, that the apostles might avoid the accusation of inconstancy. And thirdly, of gluttony also. Could you imagine just going from house to house to house because they're all feeding you very, very well? I mean, I've had a taste of that as a public speaker. You get treated very well. I remember when I spoke at the Guam Men's Conference in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Boy, did they feed me very well. Every night there was something great. The next great feast. So the temptation can be real. I can imagine, especially if you're a bishop, all of those big gala dinners, the wine is free-flowing, the food is served, night after night, for this organization or that, for this school or for this group of Catholics. It happens a lot. Pray for our bishops to avoid the pitfalls and the temptations that come with their office. Pray for them that they may be bold and courageous proclaimers. Pray for them that they may lead from the front and not the rear, by example and not just in word. Hey, we'll be right back. More is coming up next. Don't go anywhere. Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClain. It's great to be on with you. Praise be to God. Coming up at 30 past the hour, Anna Kalinowska is going to be our guest. She's written a whole series of articles on the art of dress over at 1 Peter 5. We've invited her beyond to talk about dress. Is beauty on the comeback? Because she had a lot to say about sort of the slippery slopes when it comes to beauty and fashion. She mostly writes from a woman's perspective. What is beauty? What is elegance? What is complimentary? All of those concepts. But I think it's fundamentally important because just go to your regular Sunday Mass. Go to the High Mass, for instance. Flip-flops, anyone? Anyone? Shorts, T-shirts, low cuts, all the rest. What in the world has gotten into us? We're going to be having that conversation with Anna Kalinowska from 1 Peter 5 at 30 past the hour. Hey, I don't know if you have signed up yet, but if not, can I encourage you to do so? We have our big 25-year celebration coming up August the 24th at the Niagara Falls Convention Center. It's going to be a big deal. Mother Angelica is to blame for the 25 years of this apostolate here at the Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network, radio and digital and beyond. We have, over those 25 years, hosted many conferences, actually, working with some of the biggest names in the Catholic world. And we want to celebrate, and we want you to be there as well. Niagara Falls, August the 24th. Candace Owens is going to be there to share a bit of her journey into the Catholic faith. Bishop Strickland is coming, Father Mateg, Raymond Arroyo, Mother Miriam, Jim Havens from The Simple Truth, myself, and even producer Jake and the whole team. We want you to join us and celebrate along with us. There's a conference, then there's a VIP dinner. You can find all the details on the website at thestationofthecross.com. We would love to have you. Please do check it out and share it with a friend. We would be grateful. Did you catch the pushback in Europe this last week? I mean, oh my. The far right, and I'm using that in air quotes here, because that is a term that gets tossed about quite a bit, usually in a derogatory way. And it's designed to evoke in your mind Adolf Hitler, Mussolini, right? You're supposed to think, when you think far right, you're supposed to think of the most evil characters of the last 150, plus years or whatever. But I'm looking at a map here, or a little graphic, an image of France and all the little voting districts. And it's all entirely colored by the quote-unquote far right, except for Paris, which is the lone holdout. It's surrounded in a sea of blue. Far right. they are making a comeback. I find it interesting. I found two articles that I'm going to be linking to in the show notes for you at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. We always post the show notes at the top of the hour for you so you can find out everything we've talked about and read it for yourself. But John Allen Jr. over at The Crux has an article out today, or actually came out yesterday. It says, European voters deal blow to Pope's agenda on migration and climate change. Now, truth in advertising, I'm not the biggest John Allen fan or Crux fan, but nonetheless, I think this is interesting. This is what it says. Less than a week after Pope Francis called on people to recognize migrants as a living image of God's people on their way to the eternal homeland, voters across Europe dealt a potentially serious blow to that vision by rewarding far-right, anti-immigrant parties in elections for the European Parliament. Even Ireland, who has been going through so much, we've been talking quite a bit about Ireland over this past year and all of their challenges, even they have pushed back on this. So all of Europe seems to have spoken up that they are tired of what they see as immigration issues and they want something done. The article goes on. While mainstream pro-EU forces are still expected to put together a governing majority, with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen proclaiming the results show that the center is holding. A major storyline in the June 6-9 elections, nevertheless, was the strong showing of far-right parties in several nations. So don't worry, it's all okay. We're still in charge. We won't let the far right really and truly take over. Everything is fine here. Move along, move along. The article goes on. The results were more dramatic in France, where President Emmanuel Macron's faction was swamped by the National Rally Party under Marine Le Pen, forcing Macron to dissolve parliament and call snap elections for June 30th. In Austria, Germany, and the Netherlands too, far-right parties scored major gains. Conversely, Green and Liberal parties each lost an estimated 20 seats, with the Greens dipping from 72 seats in the current parliament to just 53 in the new one. In Italy, the center-right Brothers of Italy party under Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni was the big winner, claiming almost 30% of the vote, although the main leftist opposition party, the Democrats, also did better than expected, finishing at roughly 24%. Let's not forget that the prime minister there in Italy, Giorgia Meloni, who is living with a partner, not married, is the so-called conservative far-right, a leader there. Just ruminate on that. Let that sink in for a second. With it, take that in. Exactly what are we talking about when conservatives don't conserve things? Which is a part of the interesting part of the conversation about what does it mean, this far right? Well, Rod Dreyer, writing over at the European Conservative, in an article he posted called What is Far Right Anyway, came out today, just this morning. I'm going to be linking to it in the show notes. He actually quotes a liberal scholar in this article, and which I guess is interesting to him. He says this liberal scholar's name is Mark Lila, and he published a thoughtful piece in the New York Review of Books, and I'm going to quote this quote to you from Rod Dreyer's article. It says, and this is about who the far right is. They predictably reject the European Union's same-sex marriage and mass migration. These far-righters, this is what they're rejecting. But he goes on. But they also reject unregulated global financial markets, neoliberal austerity, generic modification, consumerism, and the MIGFAM, or the AGFAM, the AGFAM, or Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft. So these far-righters are surprising to these liberal pundits because when they actually look into what they believe and what they stand for. It goes on. The melange may sound odd to our ears, but it is far more consistent than the positions of contemporary American conservatives. Continental conservatism, going back to the 19th century, has always rested on an organic conception of society. It sees Europe as a single Christian civilization composed of different nations with distinct languages and customs. These nations are composed of families, which are organisms, too, with different but complementary roles and duties for mothers, fathers, and children. On this view, the fundamental task of society is to transmit knowledge, morality, and culture to future generations, perpetuating the life of the civilizational organism. It is not to serve an agglomeration of autonomous individuals bearing rights. Rod Dreher says this shocked him. He says not only does it describe his own conservatism, but it turned out that on his reporting trip to Paris, Leela had spent time with and interviewed friends of his. At last, he thought, an American journalist gets European conservative politics. So, what is the takeaway from Rod Dreher there? That when these liberals look into what the far right actually stand for, they're surprised because the image in their mind is Adolf Hitler. It's Mussolini. It's fascist. In fact, that's something Rod Dreher talks about in that article, that when Mark was being sent by, his outlet to go to Europe to investigate this rise of the far right, what does it all actually mean? He was very surprised at what he found because he was warned, stay away from the fascists. That's what he was told. Stay away from the fascists. I find it fascinating. What is the very definition of fascism? Isn't fascism the cooperation between big government and big corporation to work together towards the control, the means of controlling economy and society itself? You would think we would be experiencing that right now between big government and big companies, big pharma, big social media. They all seem to be working hand in glove. But nonetheless, we are to be made to think of the far right in terms of Adolf Hitler and Mussolini. And yet these far righters seem to want something different than that. Going back to the Crux article, it says many analysts believe the fact that both France and Germany consider the two most influential members of the 27 states that make up the European Union, but now face surging right-wing populist movements may prove especially consequential. On the whole, most observers expect the new-look European Parliament to be somewhat more Eurosceptic, less aggressive in responding to climate change and on environmental policies, and tougher on immigration. It's a common theme across all of Europe these days. They are pretty much tired of the unregulated, unchecked mass migration. It seems to be causing all kinds of problems. And I think they're finally lamenting the loss of their culture, the loss of their society. But I think the real question for us to ask is it a day late, a dollar short? Has the ship sailed and it's impossible to go backwards now? I'm not sure. But John Allen goes on. All that may pose serious challenges for the Vatican's diplomatic and political agenda under Pope Francis, who has repeatedly warned against the rise of the very sort of nationalist and populist forces who scored major gains. So, Pope Francis is not a happy camper. He seems to be upset that Europe isn't going with this plan, this game plan. They seem to be going opposite to that. It goes on. In November of 2022, for example, Francis hosted a Vatican lunch for hundreds of refugees and homeless persons, saying at the time, let us not be enchanted by the sirens of populism, which exploit people's real needs by facile and hasty solutions. Last August, he used the platform created by World Youth Day to condemn populism and conspiracy theories. Ahead of the European elections, Cardinal Matteo Zuppi of Bologna, president of the Italian Bishops' Conference, and Bishop Mariano Crosata of Latina and president of the Commission for Episcopal Conferences of the European Union, issued a public letter on the vote widely perceived to have been inspired by Pope Francis. In it, the two prelates urged commitment to European unity, writing, some would push to believe that we would be better off in isolation, whereas any one of our countries, even a large one, would be fatally reduced to the weakest position. Okay, hold on. Let that sink in for a second. Go along to get along. Get on the team. Stop fussing. Stay in the pew and mind your lane. That's what I heard. What did you hear when you heard that? I mean, shut up, sit down, and just obey. That's essentially what I'm hearing here. But is it a sin to want regulated immigration? Is it a sin to say, I like the environment, I want to be a good steward of the environment, but I don't want to be a slave to environmental lobby and politics? It seems to be conflating those things, isn't it? The far right isn't Hitler. The far right isn't Mussolini. They want families between a man and a woman raising their kids. They want back the Christendom that they have lost. They lost it because they have rejected Christendom. And now they're lamenting it. And I don't see this far-right movement being successful until they bring back Christendom in their hearts, in their homes, in their neighborhood, and in their country. Christ first, the King of Kings. That is the way.
Are you looking for a simple, creative, and easy way to contribute to the Station of the Cross? Why not consider a transfer of stock or donating a mutual fund gift to help support us in our work of evangelization? Transferring a gift of long-term appreciated stocks, those owned for more than 1 year, can provide significant tax advantages by allowing you to deduct the fair market value while paying no capital gain tax. Today, most stock transfers are easily made electronically from your broker. Just call us at 1-877-888-6279. That's 1-877-888-6279. Your broker will need to indicate the number of shares being transferred and the QSIP number of the shares. May God bless you for considering a gift to the Station of the Cross so that we can continue proclaiming the fullness of truth with clarity and charity for years to come.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McLean, and here are your headline news. The Hill reports Alito Roberts secretly recorded at Historical Society dinner. The remarks were recorded by progressive filmmaker Lauren Windsor, who attended the event as a member of the society under her real name, though she posed as a conservative to elicit answers from the justices. The recordings were published by Rolling Stone and Windsor's activist site The Undercurrent. Alito appeared to embrace his role as a partisan, which liberals have long accused him of being, despite the normally nonpartisan nature of the court. Roberts denied that the current court is especially politically polarized, and he brushed off her idea that the U.S. is inherently Christian. Just the News is reporting U.S. borrowing nearly $5 billion per day. The U.S. government borrowing $4.9 billion each day on average, driving the deficit for the first 8 months of this current fiscal year to $1.2 trillion, according to the latest data from the Congressional Budget Office. Maya McGinnis, president of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, said in an analysis published on Monday, quote, the Social Security Retirement Trust Fund is still on track to face insolvency in less than a decade, with Medicare not far behind. Without changes, retirees will be facing potential across-the-board cuts to their benefits. And Epoch Times is reporting jury begins deliberation in Hunter Biden gun trial. Prosecutors allege that testimony from Mr. Biden's ex-romantic partners, along with text messages and memoir excerpts, prove that Mr. Biden was knowingly an active drug addict in October of 2018 when he purchased a firearm. Authorities are accusing Mr. Biden of lying to the federally licensed gun store by illegally claiming on his application that he was not a drug user at the time of purchase and then unlawfully possessing the gun for 11 days. Mr. Biden is facing 3 felonies and has pleaded not guilty to the charges. Mr. Biden is facing up to 25 years in prison if convicted in the federal gun case, although first-time offenders typically don't receive the maximum sentence. However, it is not clear whether the judge will give Hunter Biden jail time at all if he is handed a guilty verdict. Isn't that the same gun he threw into a trash dumpster? Anyway, those are your headline news. Over at 1 Peter 5, I saw a whole series of articles on the art of dress There was quite a bit of material here, and I think you should check it out and read to it. We're going to link to all of them over at 1peter5.com in the show notes today, because, I mean, just you don't have to go very far. You don't even have to go to a Walmart or a Family General dollar store or whatever. You can just walk out onto your street and you'll find, oh, okay, the dress code has changed over the past many decades. Oh, you want more evidence? Just go to Sunday Mass and you'll see all kinds of shenanigans at parishes all across the world. And the dress code seems to have been a lost cause, which was why I found Anna Kalinowska's articles incredible, because there is a sense of trying to rebuild the good, the true, and the beautiful. Beauty, elegance, and a code. We seem to have lost it. Can we get it back? Anna joins us now. Anna, good morning to you. Thank you for your time. Let's jump right into it. Contemporary dress lacks beauty. That was one of your statements in your many articles, which are great, by the way. Why do you say that? Why does contemporary dress lack beauty, elegance, and, goodness?
Well, throughout history, we have honored beauty as something really admirable and desirable until you see right around the time of the First World War, the powers that be decide that beauty is no longer something to elevate. And you see this in all of the art forms, in architecture, painting, sculpture. They just throw aside beauty and they decide to promote ugliness instead. And dress is an art form that was not unscathed by this prevailing sentiment. So we see today still the aftershocks of that revolution. And it's kind of anything goes, where we just see things that are inherently ugly really praised on the red carpet and by the very people that have the resources to dress the most beautifully. So this is a tragedy, and it's something that we as Catholics have a responsibility to recognize and try to address.
In your articles, you talk about two schools of thought, normalcy and modesty. Let's go to normalcy first, something I was talking about a minute ago. Why do we feel so compelled too often to look just like the rest of the world?
Humans are made for community, and we're made to communicate with one another. Our clothing is a really powerful tool of communication, sometimes even more powerful than words. So when we dress, we are giving a message to the world. The problem is when the world has decided that they are going to value all of the things that we don't value, and that they are going to throw aside all of the things that we as Catholics value, then the message that we're going to put out is going to be very different than the message that they're used to hearing. And that's why it's actually very natural that we would look different. And that's why we can be comfortable with this, even though in a sense, it's not what we're used to as humans, and it's not an ideal situation. An ideal situation would be where we can all communicate with one another and understand one another, and no one will say, oh, that person looks so strange. Why are they so dressed up? Because we'll all understand they're dressed up because they believe they're a child of God, and they believe that they have dignity and they love beauty. Of course they're dressed that way.
I like that concept because we inherently know this, although sometimes we might reject the idea because of the religious connection. Like, why should nuns have to wear habits or priests have to wear clerics or a cassock? Well, for the same reason why a judge wears his robe, right? Where a police officer wears a uniform with a badge, why a doctor wears scrubs and a white jacket. We recognize the clothing is a part of their status and their role in society, and that has sort of a meaning to it. And it's even greater meaning in the religious connection. But you also say this in one of your articles. You say, although all souls claim membership in the mystical body of Christ, women particularly enjoy the privilege of embodying the church, who is feminine, the mystical bride of Christ, and symbolizing her very essence. This fact, rather than daunting women, should renew their zeal and encourage them to take up the quest once again. One has only to look at the book of Proverbs, valiant women, to see that the acquisition of clothing for herself and her household takes up a good deal of time. And you quote the Proverbs there, Proverbs 31, of course, being that quote. I found that interesting, number one, because of the feminine role being so significant within the family, within society, within the church. So you focus a lot on women and why they should dress a certain way. There seems to be a mystical quality to the way women dress. Is that not the case?
There's such a privilege in womanhood in being that little type of the church and being also a little type of the Blessed Mother. And this is just something that every woman can understand with this bridal imagery that we have of the church. And it's a mission. It's something that we can embrace as something just beyond a privilege. You know, it's something that every single day we can remember, and this idea of spiritual motherhood, and we can nourish people not just with what we say and what we do, but with what we wear, because we can present to the world something beautiful.
Is it just a case of, going back to yesteryear, times gone by, and just dressing like they used to do, covering from the bottom of the chin all the way down to the ankles, just to make sure everything is covered? Is that what we're talking about here?
There are universal principles surrounding beauty that can help guide us to beauty that will show up in every generation and every age. So it's not as if we found the ideal way of dress in some particular decade of some particular century, and that's it, and we have to go back to that. It's more that we look at our present day, and then we look at the principles of art and what gives us beauty. And these are things that you can study as you learn any art form. And then see how do those inform our way of dress for our state in life today.
What do you think when you go to mass and you see people dressed in flip-flops, shorts, low cuts, anything like that? What goes through your mind?
I think that they've been sold a lie that comfort and convenience are the highest values, and they don't understand the great joy and the wonderful fulfillment that they can find in dressing beautifully.
So, I'm always paying attention to how the guys dress. I personally have come to, mature in this category over my course of my own life. So when I go to a mass on Sunday, it's always a jacket, it's always a tie. Sometimes it might be a three-piece. I put a little, color into your pocket there. But I always wear a hat now when I go out. I used to never do that, but now I always do. Always a hat, a fedora, or some other kind of hat every time I'm going out, especially when I go to church, even though it's like 807 billion degrees outside here in Texas. I think it's important. Do you think men, because you talk a lot about women, but what about the guys?
Absolutely. What you describe is so wonderful. And you've probably noticed, too, that an extra article of clothing like a hat or a jacket over a shirt, when it's really, really warm outside, doesn't actually make you that much warmer. So we're going to dress anyway, right? And we might as well do it beautifully, even adding a little bit of clothing, sometimes adding a little bit of material. If you're dressing the right way, if you're thinking intentionally about wearing lighter colors in the summer, wearing summer weight fabrics, then you're still going to be pretty comfortable, and you're going to look wonderful, and you're going to brighten people's day. You're also informing yourself about your own dignity.
We're talking with Anna Kalinowska. She has a series of articles over at 1 Peter 5. We're going to be linking to them, 1peter5.com. The Art of Dress. And again, there are several chapters to this. This could probably be a book. Maybe that's the question we should ask. But on the other side of the break, I want to ask Anna about some practical takeaways. Like, let's talk about some principles here when you're shopping for clothes. She talks about how women really have spent a lot of time looking for clothes, the right clothes. So how do we find that? And then I think more importantly, how can we encourage? I've got teenage daughters. I've got, kids. How do we help our kids understand these principles and help them make proper decisions when it comes to their dress code? All of that with Anna Kalinowska coming up just after the break. Do us a favor, share us with a friend. We'll be right back. Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McLean. Praise be to God. We're having a conversation with Anna Kalinowska. She writes a series of articles over at 1peter5.com. Well, again, we're going to link to them. They're called The Art of Dress, and there's several installments. I would encourage you to check them all out if you want a deep dive on her thoughts and the subject. It really is pretty good stuff. So, again, 1peter5.com, or check out the show notes at the top of the hour. Anna, welcome back to the show. Anna, in one of your articles, you write, where most saints enjoyed cultural climates with sure customs that promoted beauty suited to each class and state in life, modern women find themselves in societal anarchy that only ever promotes ugliness. Women must now rediscover, reassemble, and create new what in previous generations was handed from mother to daughter as a matter of course. So I want to talk about the principles. You know, what principles should we be following when trying to put a wardrobe together, or at least a presentation to anybody outside of our home?
A lot of people look at modesty as the number one principle, but what they don't understand is that if we are looking for harmony, we will find modesty as long as we're well informed in the faith, because an immodest dress is not going to harmonize with our dignity as children of God and daughters of God. So the number one thing to remember is harmony, both in the moral realm and in the aesthetical realm. And then when we start looking at harmony as a guiding principle for art, then there are all kinds of other questions we ask. So does a dress harmonize with my age? Does it harmonize with the season of the year? Does it harmonize with the activity that I'm taking part in? And once we answer these questions, we'll have all kinds of common sense solutions that will guide us to actually what is a successful ensemble. And then once we know that, it's still kind of hard to find because the market is very limited right now. We don't see a lot of great options, but at least then we know what we're looking for.
Dama Catholica over in our chat box on YouTube is asking a question, says, how do you dress for the gym? She says, I love wearing skirts and dresses, but that's not ideal for the gym, and I'm a personal trainer. What would you recommend?
So for the gym, I think leggings are great as long as you have a little skirt over them, so an athletic skirt of some kind. And I think this works for most kinds of exercise. Most people aren't trying to break records on the track because they're not worried about a lot of extra fabric, adding a millisecond of time to their speed. So as long as it's safe to wear just a little bit of extra fabric, to have sort of a skirt or an athletic skirt over some leggings, and then an athletic top with a sports bra is great. Maybe if you can, try to get some kind of cap sleeves. Even that is better than just some like a strapless or strappy kind of top.
Just the other day, I was watching Tucker Carlson interview someone, Patrick Bet-David, that's who it was. And they got into this talk about dress code. And Tucker was lamenting how there used to be where the wealthy class always knew they had to dress according to their class. And he saw it not as like a presumptuous sort of egotistical thing, but rather it was like a duty, like a duty to society. You have wealth, you have resources, you are the owners of industry, and you provide, jobs and resources, incomes for the lower classes. You should dress to that state. You have an obligation to do so. And then he lamented how in this modern era, the wealthy dress just like everybody else on the streets. They wear the flip-flops, the baggy or the tight jeans and all of the other stuff. And it seems like he lamented it because he was saying they have disavowed themselves of their responsibility to society. And he says you can tell that by the way they dress. Do you think that that's accurate? Do you think the wealthy class has an obligation to dress according to their state?
Yes, and then this brings the question, who is the wealthy class? We have people that have a lot of financial wealth, but they're impoverished when it comes to morality and when it comes to philosophy and an understanding of the truth. So as Catholics, this is not to be superior, but this is just to recognize a responsibility. We are a wealthy class because we have the riches of the faith and we have the truth. And this is all we need to inform everything we do, including all of the arts. So we actually have to look at ourselves then as a wealthy class, maybe not financially wealthy, but as we know, money isn't actually the only tool. So with this understanding of the truth and goodness and beauty, we can then show the world what it is to dress in the most beautiful, elevated way.
Isn't beauty in the eye of the beholder, though? So I guess that a lot of people might ask themselves, but who are you to judge what is beautiful and what is not, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable? Is it possible, Anna, to say that there is some natural law elements to this, that something is demonstrably beautiful or not?
Absolutely. And we see this in all the different art forms leading up to the First World War, before the complete destruction of art and culture. And there are governing principles that you can look at to examine any kind of work of art and determine how closely does it fall to that category of beauty. And if you believe that there is a creator and an author of all beauty, and that he has made his creation beautiful, and that as human beings create, we are acting in his image, and it's our responsibility then to make beautiful things, then you do have this objective principle that God has determined what is beautiful. All things that reflect him are beautiful. And then as you go along with that understanding, you can be guided in your practice of any kind of art.
And what kind of advice would you offer parents trying to raise, especially teenage daughters? I've got some, but also boys too. How do you help them make better decisions when putting their wardrobes together?
Is to have a home that surrounds your children with beauty, so that they will grow to love beauty just as a matter of their environment. So beautiful artwork in the home, beautiful literature and images that they can see and read, and beautiful stories that will inspire them both in a moral way and an aesthetical way. And once they are saturated in this beauty, they will gravitate towards beauty. So for instance, young girls will watch maybe movies about the Jane Austen stories, so Pride and Prejudice, and they'll see beautiful costumes in these movies. Or boys will see strong, heroic cowboys, and they will want to look like these people, and this is very good. But if we feed our children images of ugly cartoon characters and strange monster-like Bratz dolls and things like this, then they're going to have a distorted idea of what is beauty. They're going to find attractive things that are not actually beautiful. So if we're able to give them that environment, then all we have to do is kind of give them a few more guidelines as they choose how to clothe themselves. And this is kind of an ongoing thing as we raise them. And we'll find that they will then kind of be their own coach, so to speak, when it comes to dress.
You have several articles on this topic. Is this going to become a book for you?
It is actually, yes.
Makes sense. There's a lot of meat on the bones in these articles. So if you're looking to dive deeper into the subject, then you do need to check out Anna's articles over at 1peter5.com. We're going to link to all of her archive so you can see all of those articles sort of in one fell swoop. Again, 1peter5.com. But go to the show notes today over at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. We're going to post the show notes here in just a moment. Everything we talked about and more is going to be there. But we're going to go into the after show, where we're going to continue our conversation, interact directly with you. You get to drive the conversation in the after show. We'll see you right back here for another round of A Catholic Take. Do us a favor, share us with a friend. God bless you, and God love you.
And we're back. Welcome to the after show, everyone.
Amen.
Oops, sorry,
James 16897.
I didn't have your mic on. Sorry.
My mic wasn't on. What is going on over there today?
Here, trying to
Poor Jake. He was like doing fire juggling while swallowing a sword all at the same time today. It's like the struggle bus is real, as James 16897 says. It's true. It's true. Good morning to you, Damon. Good morning to you, Alejandro, our friend. Good morning to you, Tato. Good morning to you, Yvonne, Janice, Karen, Annie Bashaw, Liz Finch. Good morning to you, Paul, Becky. good morning to you. Praise be to Jesus. Sharon, how are you feeling? Hopefully you're doing really well. Jen Nugent, good morning to you. I like that. I like there's a meme over on the Telegram group of a wolf giving a political speech to the sheep saying, once I'm elected, I will be vegetarian. I promise. I like that's so good. And someone put a lot of effort into it, too. That's fantastic. Good morning to you. Praise be to Jesus. Mimi, good morning. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Karen, good morning to you. Thanks for being on the team today. Mateus, up early from sunny California this time of day. Praise be to God. Good morning to everybody hanging out with us today. If you're over on the Rumbles, make sure to comment. We're trying to grow the comment box on the Rumble there. So if you're hanging out quietly in the background, why not be a part of the team and let us know you're hanging out today and let us know where you're from. James is over there, Robert DeBruce, Cindy K, Nick the Mike, Edward Clancy says, good morning, everyone. The terms right and left have been bastardized. Nazis were socialists. The founders of fascism were all communists. The spectrum is about personal autonomy for the most part. Yes, well said, Edward. The whole far right is a ploy by the left to get you to think the worst thoughts possible. But Hitler was on the far left, if anything. Mussolini, far left. They weren't far right. They were far left. That's part of the issue there. Alberto, good morning to you. Andrea, Christine, good morning to you. Restore Justice is back. Miriam, Catherine Hickey, Maria Lupini, good morning to you. Suzanne, Alberto, Helen Grace, Carl Thomas, good morning to you. Lights is 10. Christine Dion, good morning to you. Sharon's over here. Caleb's here. Praise be to God. Frank Rangel, good morning, everybody. Colin, good morning to you. Dama, good morning to you. Thanks for hanging out, commenting, being a part of the team today. Really appreciate you. Paul, good morning to you. Frederic, good morning. Gregory, good morning. Let me know if you have any questions. I think Anna's still on with us. Anna, are you still there? So whenever you start talking, Anna, just like the first 3 seconds, say nothing of real meaning and then start talking meaningful, because that's probably what we're going to have to do to get there. I don't know why, but there's an audio issue that we're struggling through today. You're still hanging out, though. We're glad you're here. Thanks for doing it. Sharon, I'm glad you're feeling good today. Praise be to God. Now, Anna, you're from the Midwest, right? Like St. Louis, if I remember that correctly?
That's right. I'm from St. Louis.
Were you raised Catholic?
I was, yes.
Yeah, praise be to God. So in your home, as a little girl growing up, were these the principles taught to you by your parents? How did you come to the point where you're at today, where you're writing a book on the subject?
My parents gave me a really wonderful upbringing, but they didn't intentionally try to saturate us with art principles. They were what you would call fairly normal people when it comes to art, conservative with the faith. But when it comes to art, we just lived in the suburbs and we had what you would call normal clothes. And we didn't really go out of our way to go thrifting or antique shopping or dress up in an unusual way, certainly. So I would say what my parents did for me was just gave me a love of beauty by allowing me to experience beautiful things in my education. And as I grew towards those, and as I in a secular college, just to try to defend my belief that beauty is an objective thing and that it's not all relative, I decided that I wanted to do some more research and understand how I could explain that to others.
Yeah, well said. Yeah. By the way, Suzanne, good morning to you. Suzanne Derringer from Pittsburgh. Welcome to the team. Glad you're here. Thanks for hanging out with us. We have the recipes. Good morning to you. Praise be to Jesus. Glad you're here. Debbie Furtado. Debbie, where are you from, Debbie Furtado? That sounds like a very Portuguese name. Are you from back east? I'm just curious. Let me know. The emphasis, Debbie says, for church dress should be modest, clean, and well-maintained. It is essential that all people show respect for the priest, others, and most importantly, the Holy Eucharist. I got to be honest with you. I've been to trad masses. I'm a trad Catholic. I go to trad masses. I've been to trad communities. I've seen some dress code violations, even TLM parishes that kind of shock me, to be honest. Okay, I'm just like, really? Like what? Like what are we talking about here? You kind of get this notion in trad communities that everyone is dressed to the nines, but that's not the truth. It is in fact a mixed bag, which is why I think it's an important conversation, because we all have to learn and grow together on why do we dress this way? Why do we pursue the more modest or beautiful or elegant dress code? Because I think it has a psychological, emotional impact, not just on ourselves and how we relate to ourselves, but how we relate to other people, and sort of our obligation towards doing those things. I think is something we have to like reclaim. We have to do a reconquista of the dress code. I got to tell you, Anna, one of the things is, can I just share one of my big pet peeves? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to warn you ahead of time so you're emotionally ready to go. I'm going to share a pet peeve I have when it comes to dress, and I'm going to ask you probably one of the most controversial dress code related questions that I could possibly ask. It's going to like nuclear explosion going to go off when I ask you that question. So prepare well. But number one, pet peeve. I travel and I cannot. Why do women insist on wearing tight yoga pants in the airport? I do not understand this. It cannot be comfortable. It's got to feel embarrassing. Why? There's no pockets. It's zero practicality, and it's not comfortable, and it's just a total distraction for every male there. Why do women do these things, Anna?
I think that they're just used to wearing this kind of athleisure clothing, and to them, to dress up for travel or to change any of their habits for travel is unnecessary. And they do find them comfortable. They feel like a second skin. And they think, oh, they're easy to wash. I can just throw them in the wash. Don't have to think about it. And they are a second skin. They're very immodest, and they also really fail to highlight the grace of the female form. So they leave nothing to the imagination, but they reduce the female form to just lines and curves that are very distracting and also just demeaning to any woman that dresses this way.
I simply I can't understand it. It's total distraction. And you almost wish you were blind walking through some of these airports because of the dress code being so bad. And I find it interesting because I find that at airports, it's especially worse. Even if, like, the other day I was at a Walmart or a Kroger or something, and, there's bad dress code there too, but it always seems like it's on another level when they're traveling. I don't understand it, but I can't imagine understanding the mind of a woman to begin with. So I guess I got a lot to learn there, but I can't imagine how comfortable that would be. I would be so uncomfortable thinking I had tight clothes on.
It's the comfort level. Well, the spandex moves with you, so...
Okay, I wore spandex back in the day, but to run in, to do exercise in.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is they're thinking, oh, if I run an exercise in it, then if I'm just at an airport and I'm going to be on a plane all day, let me be comfortable, so to speak. Which I don't understand when honestly, I like good soft dress pants for lounging because they're super comfortable. Wool can be really, really comfortable. The thin, tropical weight, like the summer weight wool you were talking about, Anna, it can be really comfortable. So I don't know I don't know why people insist on wearing tight clothes.
I'm on Team Brandon Joseph. Yoga pants should be banned. Yay and amen, brother. I'm on your side.
Lost Creole said if we're talking about fascists, where we really need fascism is in church ushers forcing people to dress well or get out of the church.
Well, or put a sign up and then have Father preach on it, right? Which is something that happens at our parish. Father does sort of remind us maybe once a year, once a half a year or something like that. He'll remind us about the dress code and whatever. But I mean, there's a balance. You don't want to come across as like beating people over the head, but at the same time, like you want to encourage them to seek the truth, sort of more organically. Yeah. And if you just chastise them, they may run the other way. I don't know, but
it depends on
either way, something has to be done.
Some people don't know how to take a hint. You just got to beat it into them.
There you go. Yeah, well said. Hey, Debbie Furtado says she's from New Bedford. I know it well. Massachusetts, Portuguese and Italian. My wife is from Peabody. We spent quite a bit of time in New Bedford. Her grandmother, my grandmother-in-law, passed away in New Bedford. I remember visiting her very often back in the late 90s and early 2000s before she passed, and spent a lot of time down in New Bedford. In fact, one of the first sandwiches at one of the first super Walmarts I'd ever been to was in New Bedford. Right as you get off the highway, it's right there. Back in the day. All right, so now, Anna, I'm going to ask you a controversial question. Pants. Should women be wearing pants?
So if we look at the principle of harmony that I mentioned earlier, that can answer the question. So do pants actually harmonize with the nature of a woman and the grace of a woman? And I have found in my own research that they don't. Now, with the caveat that certain body types will really look beautiful no matter what they wear. For instance, you can have Audrey Hepburn in like little straight leg cigarette pants, and she just looks beautiful no matter what she wears. However, she looks better in a skirt because a skirt harmonizes with her grace as a female, and there's a kind of fullness, a kind of abundance that the extra fabric of a skirt and also the modesty that it provides, all of these qualities, while they might sound a little bit philosophical, are very real. And we humans perceive these qualities when we see a woman in a skirt. The fuller the skirt, the better. Today we still have dresses and skirts, but they're so reduced from what we've seen in other periods of history. And even lower classes earlier on in history would have these wonderful full skirts that just harmonized with the fullness and the beauty and grace of the female nature. So I always say that depending on the kind of pants you're wearing, you can still be technically modest in pants. Most body types can find a type of pants that are modest. But if you can look so much more beautiful in a skirt, then why would you not choose that every single day?
It's controversial. It starts arguments. There's such a debate over whether, especially like in more traditional Catholic circles, there's a big debate over whether women can wear pants. Now, for our home, our family, my wife especially insists that our daughters wear skirts, especially in public. They wear skirts all the time. It's just the way it is. And so that's what we've trained them to do, and that's what they do. And praise be to God, they have a sense of, and especially like my younger daughter, she has, even when she was a toddler, like she had a real sense of like style or dress that like appealed to her. And she, as a toddler, she would reject some clothes that my wife would pick out for her. And she'd throw a huge fuss. She did not want to wear them because they weren't they weren't stylish enough, I suppose. And even to this day, there's a bit of a debate, a bit of a battle between them. And it's not that she's trying to be immodest at all, actually. It's just that she has a real sense of style, and she has her sense. And then when the two disagree, it's a battle. What would you say to moms who might be struggling with their daughters when it comes to the dress code? How do they encourage these girls?
Dress is an art, and art is an outlet for creativity in human life. And as soon as girls understand that there is room for creativity and that we're not trying to make things narrow and rigid, but we're actually opening up the scope for more beautiful dress, then they'll get really excited about it. And there might be some things that we have to set aside. We have to set aside the yoga pants. We have to set aside the crop tops. But if we understand those are failures, those are not actually successful art anyway, then we'll see that we can devote our time and our attention to actually cultivating dress as an art. And it's really, really fun every day to just go through the closet, look at the mirror, and decide what kind of art am I going to make today. It's really kind of like sitting down with a canvas and painting. That might intimidate some people, but we can all learn, and we practice on a daily basis. So there's great hope for all of us.
In your articles, you actually do, in one of them, you actually put pictures. I think it was your latest one. You've got some pictures of examples of some of the concepts you're talking about. And, you know, we're not talking about a burqa here, right? I think that's kind of the extreme some people could go through in their mind when we're having conversations like this. You know, you don't want women to be, you know, covering themselves completely. There's still room for style. There's still room for options. There's still room to feel and look modern, but more elegantly than maybe they would otherwise. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. We always dress in a way, should always dress in a way that reveals our form as humans, because this is part of conveying the truth about ourselves. We're humans, so we don't have to wear a burqa or a tent or something that completely disguises our shape. And this is part of just looking at what kind of clothing is going to harmonize with our shape as humans. So we don't wear something that's so tight that it's distracting to others, but we also don't wear something that's so baggy and loose that people can't even tell what the human form is anymore, because the human form was given to us by God, and it's okay for people to see it.
Jane says, growing up, a lot of people made their clothes, and someone on YouTube mentioned something about girls needing to learn to sew again. I'm trying to find that comment to see who said it, but
Christine. I found it.
Oh, Christine. Yeah, Christine brings it up. You know, I think that's an excellent point too. The ability to be so hands-on in your fashion that you could even make your clothes, get the patterns out, go through the process. That seems to be a skill that's lost a little bit, and not very many girls these days learn how to sew. I had to learn how to sew as a young man, because in the Marine Corps, in the service, you know, I did my own hymns. Okay, I was broke. I couldn't afford to pay people to do that stuff. So you learn to do a little bit of sewing all by yourself. And but do you know how to sew? Were you taught how to sew? What do you think about girls learning to sew again and actually making their own clothes?
It is a wonderful, wonderful goal, and I am learning how to sew myself right now. As girls, we just learned hand sewing, so a little bit of mending technique and just a little bit of small handcraft kind of sewing. But no, it was not part of our regular education, because it wasn't part of my mom's regular education. But it's such a powerful tool. And what I found in my own experience and from friends who are also picking up this craft, sewing is actually not too difficult, especially when it comes to clothing, because the kinds of lines and seams that we put together for clothing are a little bit more forgiving than you would first guess. There are kinds of, couture sewing or sewing if you're doing a really, really tailored jacket. That's difficult. But to make a circle skirt or to make a simple shawl, make a little capelet, make a beautiful kind of simple day dress, all of these things can be done with very little experience, and it just takes having that motivation to go forward with it.
JFVK says, you're giving me ideas about teaching sewing clothes. I will consider this. You should. Something we like to talk about here on the show quite often is, what would I do if I had George Soros's money? Something I've said many times, and I'll continue to say, is I would take that money and secretly encourage 1,000 Catholics to go out and to evangelize through what they love most, helping them build audiences and all of that. So there would be a huge opportunity on a platform like YouTube, for instance, to create content around sewing. There is a whole sewing industry. They have conferences. It's probably almost $1 billion industry or something like that. It's massive. So you could create content with large audiences and even earn a good living off of it, sewing clothes from scratch, right? If you had that skill, you could do that while also sharing your Catholic faith. So it's an opportunity to teach an actual discernible skill, share what you know best about actually creating clothes, while also talking about the gifts of modesty, elegance, beauty, and the Catholic faith through natural law. You could be planting seeds in the hearts of your viewers to grow in the desire for greater modesty and elegance and all these things. It's not everybody's going to love you when you talk about God while sewing clothes, but as Allie Marie Ingram and I talked about yesterday, so what? Let them get over it. Just do it anyway. So I think there's a real opportunity there, Jay, FVK. If you have that skill, get a camera, start recording content, start putting it up. I think there's a real opportunity to do that. I wanted to get back to guys, though. Anna, should men, especially men of, say, my vintage, because I'm old now, I'm down to 21 days left of my youth. Should men be wearing shorts casually? Like, I exercise or whatever work, that's one thing. But, like, casually, should we be wearing shorts? How do you feel about T-shirts with graphics on them, ball caps? What about black socks and shoes? Because I never wear white socks anymore. It's always black socks. What about men in dress code and their state in life, their age? How do you feel about that?
I think that shorts are generally a no-go past the age of 6 or 7, just because they really do not. Yes, they're immodest a lot of the time for guys, depending on how they sit. And this is something guys don't always realize, but they can be immodest. But even that aside, shorts just aren't dignified. And as men, we need men to stand with dignity and really represent St. Joseph and strong leaders in our world. And shorts are just kind of are going to defeat that purpose. Now, if you have some kind of activity where that's the only thing to wear, or that's the safest thing to wear, maybe like a long trouser leg will get caught in machinery or something like that, then you dress for the activity. But in general, in the vast majority of cases, I always caution against shorts. What else did you say? So the other question on
ball caps, T-shirts with graphics.
Yeah, so ball caps are one of the most unattractive hats ever. So I would say that.
How do you feel, though, Anna, about the ball cap? I wish you'd just stop beating around the bush and just tell me what you really think about the ball cap. This ambiguity, I can't deal with it. So how do you feel about ball caps?
I don't know that it even shades your face that well, does it? Is the bill of the ball cap actually that good for protecting you from the sun? I don't
while you're at the time of day when baseball is often played, it's fairly effective, and that's what it was designed for, is for playing baseball, you know?
Yeah.
Right. So maybe in the context of the game.
Yeah.
In the context of the game. Yeah. Although I've seen vintage photos of very early baseball where everyone's in like a straw derby or boater hat.
Those are pretty fun.
Fun
photos. Maybe
bring those back because there you have this beautiful material, this texture, the straw, and you can have a ribbon around the crown. I don't know. Guys can have a lot of fun with hats. That they just need to discover that, and I think they'll be hooked. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I know I'm kind of hooked on the hats these days, but and I need to increase my catalog of hats, my collection. Make hats great again. The temptation is when do you stop? When you have more hats than your wife has shoes, you've got an addiction problem that needs to be dealt with at that point. You're gonna have to just start picking some and finding a way to limit that.
An artist doesn't limit his number of brushes, Joe.
Well, how's your pipe collection? Just wondering.
Don't ask. Don't tell.
Exactly. Yeah.
Don't ask. Don't tell about the number of pipes in my collection.
Antonia, welcome and good morning to you. Thanks for hanging out with us today. What do we do if the priest encouraged wearing sneakers and jeans to mass? You said, or I saw you had a comment earlier about was it a Jesuit that encourages jeans and sneakers at mass? Here's my advice, and my advice is worth almost nothing these days, kind of like the American dollar. Find a different parish. That's a good way to do it. We used to go to a parish, a big suburban parish, huge parish, tens of thousands of souls in that parish. It looked incredibly busy every night. From the outside looking in, you thought this is a wonderful place. But honestly, the life teen culture was too hard for my kids, in my opinion. And it was too influential upon my children to live secular lives. And I'm not condemning that because I do see some value. if your job is to have to meet a public school, secular-minded kid where they are at in hopes of planting seeds and moving them along, well, then I can see why you would argue for a life teen type of an apostolate. I'm not saying it's the best solution. I'm just trying to understand it. But our kids weren't public school kids. They didn't have a secular mindset, so they, we needed to get them out of there. So we did. And that was part of the reason. It's because that the flip side of that same coin is that secular mindset makes its way into your parish and into the way you think and into the way you do things. So you get the Steely Dan guitar life teen mass thing going down, and it's not a good culture. It's just not a good culture. It's not the best for them. It's not the best for the community. So we had to leave. We had to go somewhere else to do that. I'll never forget as a kid, I'm not trying to do the woe is me thing. I'm just giving an example. But my mother struggled to keep the electricity on, for instance. There were lots of times electricity was turned off. Couldn't afford to pay it. There was a can of beans in the cabinet. That was kind of it. And you never know where you were really going to have for dinner. There was lots of those moments in our life as a young kid. My mother could never afford to keep up with the Joneses at school. Every year when we would go back to school, all the kids would have the latest set of Reeboks or Adidas or Adidas.
Adidas.
What do they call them? Adidas? I've forgotten what you call those things. Adidas.
I like that.
Adidas, which I'm sure there's a vaccine for. You should look into it. Adidas vaccines. But nonetheless, there's the keeping up with the Joneses. When the Corona phase broke out in South Central Texas, we'd get the knockoffs at the flea market. But all the kids knew which ones the knockoffs were, right? Like they could spot a fake a mile away. We shopped at Payless Shoes so we can buy one, get one free. And they would last all of about 6 weeks because I was a skateboarder and they'd just destroy these things. So it was always humiliating to go back to school every fall because I knew that I was never going to be able to keep up with the Joneses. They all had the coolest, latest, greatest, and I had nothing quite like that. That's hard on a kid. That peer pressure is hard on a kid, which is why I think as parents, you may have to put your kids in some of these schools. Maybe it's the best option. Maybe you got a great public school. I don't know. I'm not walking a mile in your shoes, but all I can tell you is the peer pressure to go along, to get along is high. So we have to train our kids to to stand out in a noisy field, to be able to understand the principles at play, so that when they see these other things, they can remind themselves about the issues of modesty, elegance, beauty, and truth. See them for what they are, instead of being, sort of addicted to the world, the flesh, and the devil. And I think that's a lot of what we're dealing with these kids these days. I am never going to regret taking on 3 jobs so I can bring my wife home from work so that I could raise our kids. That was the greatest investment I can ever make. And yes, it did put me back 25 years financially, but I don't care. It's worth it all day long. By the way, Mateus, our friend from sunny California, says, when I was a Sea Cadet, you were a Sea Cadet, Mateus? I didn't know that. What? We're alumni, bro. You and me. We should go get matching tattoos. I'm teasing. I actually don't want to do that. He says, when I was a Sea Cadet at age 14, I sewed all my patches on my uniform. With my cadets and their dads, I urged them to sew their patches on their uniform, but most end up taking them to the tailor or they look very bad. That's so true. So I also served in the Sea Cadets. I also learned how to do all of that when I was a kid. But you and I also are in the troops of St. George together, and tomorrow I'm having our troop leader, our captain of our troop, on the show to talk about the troops of St. George, why the troops of St. George are different than Boy Scouts, why they're better, and why more Catholic dads should consider getting their kids involved, their sons involved in the troops of St. George. So that's coming tomorrow. I did not know you were a Sea Cadet, Mateus. That's amazing to me. I almost never meet people who were in the Sea Cadets. Whew, that's mind-blowing. You and I are going to have to share swap notes sometime. Karen, Andy Bashaw says, I always believed that sons and daughters should learn basic home skills, including how to sew. I agree. I think it's a very useful thing to do. And by the way, Mateus, Me and my boys sewed our own patches on our troops' uniform.
There you go.
And that is why they look ugly and horrible and crooked. But we are proud to have sewn them ourselves. Sharon, God bless you. Sharon's such an incredible woman. She's a big, strong supporter of what we do. And earlier she was talking about how she has been really getting into supporting Catholics and watching Catholics on YouTube. I think it's an important thing to do. We need to support each other in the effort. So thank you for doing that, Sharon. Carl Thomas, good morning to you again. Good morning. Thanks for hanging out with us today. I'm looking for, I think more. Carl says, I think women are more classy and stylish in dresses. I think, and Anna, you can weigh in on this too. I think when women embrace an elegance, there is a natural beauty that makes them stand out in a crowd. Lately there's this trend for young women to get all the facial tattoos and the nose rings and all the stuff. And your heart just kind of breaks for them, right? Like I almost pity them. There was that lady from Ireland doing the whole singing contest, and into the diabolic, into witchcraft, and all this other nonsense. Calling herself what was it? Non-binary. She was claiming to be non-binary. And you look at pictures of her when she was younger, and you're like, oh, that's a pretty young lady. Like, what has she done to herself? But there is something true. Like, I think all human persons, no matter their creed or where they're from, when they see beauty, they recognize it. When they see elegance and beauty in a woman, they recognize it. They don't need the miniskirt to get there, right?
Sometimes the people that look like they're most off the rails, those people are really searching. And when I walk in the park and I wear a dress and a hat and I look a little bit old-fashioned, the kinds of people that say, oh, I love your dress, are usually the ones with the most piercings and the most tattoos. And that always shows me that they are the ones that are really searching. They've just been sold a lie. And if they're presented with an alternative, they'll respond to it.
Well
Amen. So what do you think about piercings and tattoos, Anna? Do you think a lady should have piercings or tattoos?
I think that certainly pierced ears is... Saint Therese had pierced ears, so I'm not going to argue with that. Earrings can be something really beautiful to accentuate the jawline and the grace of the side of a lady's face. But piercings in excess, so all over the body, are then just distracting from the natural beauty of the body. And it's the same with tattoos. Tattoos are kind of a violation of the natural beauty, and so I don't recommend them.
I do want to, Joe, you reminded me of an observation that struck me occasionally, which is, so especially when I meet traditional nuns who are wearing the full habit, the full wimple, that sort of thing, there's a certain beauty to that, not like an attractiveness, like, oh, I found this nun attractive or something silly like that. But there's a beauty to, like, when a woman is wearing a head covering, and especially these traditional ones, it kind of accentuates the beauty of the face in a really human, just objective way that you don't see otherwise. Like when you see like nuns in pantsuits and stuff like this, when you like, I've met nuns and I've just in an objective way, I've thought like, it struck me, oh, if this girl was just, not living her vocation and being a normal woman, she really wouldn't look all that beautiful. And then as a nun fulfilling her vocation and wearing a proper nun's habit, she has this beauty to her face that it's like, wow, like that's the beauty of living your vocation and living the religious life properly. And I've seen it also just with other women, like wearing their veils at mass and stuff. There's a certain objective beauty that it gives you, not an attractiveness, not an enticing way, just a wow, like that's a beautiful person there. It's really, really interesting, like how that I'd never thought of that until fairly recently when I started noticing it, and now I notice it every time. It's really, really something incredible.
You just reminded me of that on Matt Fradd's Pints with Aquinas channel.
Real quick, Sharon Felton says, like priests and cassocks. Yes, exactly like priests and cassocks. A priest in a cassock looks, I don't want to say handsomer, but looks better, looks manlier, looks more masculine than, and he could be like a small, nerdy-looking priest, but he still looks more masculine in his cassock than like a jacked, built priest would in, shorts and a T-shirt or something. He just does. It looks more masculine and admirable.
Especially if he's had the cassock fitted for him, I would argue.
Sure.
It fits better. I've seen some guys wear cassocks that were just generic or general, and they're huge. They're like, they're not. They just don't. They don't fit well, and you can tell. It doesn't. I think it looks a wee bit sloppy. But I had two thoughts. One was the mother. I forget her name on Pints with Aquinas. I just saw a thumbnail yesterday with her face on it. Just to your point, she's covered, only her face comes out, and I agree. I mean, that's exactly what I thought about, like the natural beauty. The makeup is another conversation piece in this. Is a lot of women kind of can go way over the top when it comes to makeup, and yet I think you can be simple and beautiful and elegant without all of that. And I think it stands out, and I think you just made a good point. The other question in my mind, Jake, is why do you hate polyester?
Why don't you?
You simply lambasted Sister Pantsuit and her polyester habit. That seems very rude and not charitable and nonsensical.
I'm slowly but surely. So like the green initiatives where like 0% emissions by 2023 or whatever like that. So I'm aiming for 0% polyester in my wardrobe by 2030. I'm slowly on my way. Yes, that's my agenda.
This is what you're running on?
My
this
agenda
is your
2030 is 0% polyester.
Zero polyester
I'm doing
by
very
2030.
Well doing very well today. This is camel hair on the
Don't tell Elon Musk that. I'm sure that's how he powers the space starship, whatever that thing is called. With pure polyester,
well, throw it into the spaceship and get it out of our clothes. Like that's
and just send it to Mars with the rest of the colonies of crazy peoples. Go for it. And how do you feel about makeup, ladies and makeup? What is your opinion there?
Makeup is okay as long as it's harmonizing with your natural complexion. So it can help because since we're in a fallen world and we all have little flaws, we're not the perfect ideal. Even like a very young girl might have problems with her complexion. Makeup can help with that and give kind of a portrayal of what our ideal complexion would be. So for instance, if I have beautiful creamy skin, but I have like a little splotch on one side of my face, then maybe some concealer is going to show my beautiful skin and not actually distract people. Oh, like what's that splotch on her face? So makeup has a role, and it can actually really enhance ladies' faces. But it, in moderation, we have to look at it. When is it harmonizing with me and my beauty, and when is it just taking over?
Dory is calling out Trad Jack Burton here. What about rayon?
I love rayon. I have all my Aloha shirts are almost all of them are rayon. It's a very nice. It's made from bamboo. It's a great It's a great natural fabric. I like it.
I don't know. Simon
it
says
breathes. It's soft. It breathes. It's great. Oh.
Breathes. Wool is the original breathing material.
Yes.
Simon says the strength of a uniform is its silence. A lesson from St. Joseph is that there's a connection between masculinity and silence. Pius XII looked more masculine than Pope Francis. That's true. I would argue that's definitely true. Laura says, love makeup. Love makeup. Yeah, I mean, moderation, right? Moderation, Anna. That's what you're talking about. Like everything in moderation, appropriate, not over the top, not crazy. I think those are important concepts. All things in moderation.
Francis de Sales says something about that. I think in Introduction to the Devout Life, he talks about, basically don't wear potato sacks. You should have a sense of style that helps you fit in enough with the world. If you're a layperson, a normal layperson, fit in enough with the world that people don't just write you off immediately. And that way you will actually evangelize better by, being part of being in the world, just not of it. You have to look, you're not dressing with the latest fashions, but you're dressing with a certain style that helps you fit in enough to, be able to reach out and connect to a person who otherwise might just write you off, especially if you're showing up in like Amish clothing or something, Yeah. You're not supposed to wear potato sacks.
You're not. Antonia points out it's sad women's clothes are so expensive. You know what you just reminded me of, Antonia, is when my oldest daughter was born, Mary Elizabeth. She's got a birthday coming up. She's going to be 19. I'll never forget when we were getting ready to go to the hospital to for my wife to have our daughter to be born. I made this decision that I was going to go buy the outfit that she would wear home from the hospital. Like, I thought it would be like just a special way to connect with my daughter. So I remember going and shopping. I want to say I went to Burlington Coat Factory, if I remember correctly. And I remember seeing, like, they have all these cute dresses. All this is really cute, really beautiful little dresses for little babies. And I thought that was awesome. So I picked one out, and she wore that home from the hospital. It was special. And I remember being deathly scared of driving her home. Like, having a baby in the car scared me to, like, oh, we're going to get in an accident, just the whole experience. Then when my second son, because my oldest is my son Stephen, and then my daughter Mary Elizabeth, and my next son was John Paul. And I remember when John Paul was about to be born, I tried to do the same thing. I'm like, I'm going to go to the store, I'm going to buy the outfit that my son is going to wear home from the hospital. And I remember going back to Burlington and thinking, the outfits are horrible. Like, there's not nearly as much selection. They don't look nearly as good. This is like garbage. And I just couldn't find like the same equal and opposite. So it definitely feels like there is a sort of a lopsidedness when it comes to clothing for girls versus boys. Maybe it's just toddlers, but in general, I think, am I mistaken on that, Anna? Do you think that is there a bigger industry for women's clothing than men's clothing in general? Are there more options for women than for men? How do you see it?
Yeah, in general, I would say certainly. I think that dressing a baby girl is like dressing a little doll, and women have a lot of fun with that. So the market responds and provides lots and lots of options. But dressing little baby boys is not so exciting. And so I think that there's probably just less of a market for it, which brings us back to our conversation about sewing. If you know how to sew, then you can really make anything that you want. You don't have to be reliant on the market. Or you can thrift, or you can look for vintage options, and sometimes find really, really wonderful boys' clothing from previous decades. Of course, all this requires time. So we have to be willing to sacrifice either time or money whenever we decide we want to dress our children better.
Quo Vadis says, good morning. The struggle is real indeed. Socks and sandals for dad. Oh, man, I'm so guilty of this. I am so guilty of this. Black socks and sandals. That's a thing. That is a thing. Like, get off my lawn, you whippersnapper. Like, oh, man, especially on Sundays when I get home from Mass, and I will get undressed from my Sunday best, and then I'll put on shorts. True story. But I'll keep the black socks on. I don't know why, but I do. And then I'm slipping on the slippers for the rest of the day. It is a black sock and sandal thing.
Well,
I don't understand.
Here's my opportunity to bring up that paragon of style, James Bond, in the original novels. Often went to the Caribbean wearing a tropical weight suit, which is proper. It's lightweight, very lightweight suit with short sleeve dress shirts and sandals, because that's what the author Ian Fleming liked to wear when he was in the tropics. Which is,
oh, man.
Can you imagine a suit with sandals? That's maybe not ideal.
Some people are saying the stream is frozen. I'm not sure. Are you guys seeing the stream cut out? Did it end early? I'm not sure.
YouTube might have cut off here. So, but I think we're coming up near the end.
Yeah, we're probably going to wrap it up anyway.
Yeah.
For those that are still listening and hanging out with us, we appreciate you being on the team today. I'm sorry about the technical issues. We're glad we got Anna on the team today anyway, and persevered through it all. But Noonie, good morning to you. Thanks for being a part of us, being a part of our conversation today. So we're going to say goodbye to everybody because of these glitches. I guess this is God's holy will that this is the time to bring it to a close. We'll see you back tomorrow want to have Captain Matt Anderson on the team from the Troops of St. George to talk about what makes the Troops so different, why dads and sons can make scouting great again from a Catholic perspective. The only perspective I seem to care about is the Catholic one. Yay and amen. Anna, God bless you. Thanks for your time today. Appreciated your articles, very in-depth, and look forward to your book when it comes out. Let us know. We'd love to have you back. All right. Praise be to God. We'll see you guys here tomorrow. Do us a favor, though. Share us with a friend. Make sure to check out the show notes. Jack Burton will get those up if he hasn't done so already. Also, check out the link to the 25th anniversary conference, thestationofthecross.com. Click on that banner. Get registered today. We do want to hang out with you in Niagara Falls this August. Candace Owens is going to be there, Bishop Strickland, Remy DeRorio, and maybe you. God love you.